Brought to you by Ayoko, Africa's leading integrated technology services company. We're back and it's time for Tech Talk. Now, Vumatel has crossed the 1 million customer mark. This just months after being part of the largest fiber merger in the country's history. This milestone was achieved with a smaller trove of fiber assets compared with rival Telkom and cements the company's position as the largest provider of fiber internet connectivity to homes in the country. Business Day's Mudiwa Gavaza joins us with greater perspective on what this milestone suggests for the company and internet connectivity in South Africa. Mudiwa, thank you so much for your time today. And let's start right there. The significance of this move. I mean, over, 1 million customers, no small feat. Talk to me about the significance of this milestone in the context of South Africa's fiber market.
So the significance is simply that they are the first of the fiber to the home players, to reach that particular landmark from the data that we know. Telkom is a bigger fiber network operator, than Vumatel and Dark Fiber Africa, because you have these two companies that are part of Massive, and they're the two big ones that make up that particular portfolio. And Telkom is a bigger fiber network operator. However, Vumatel is credited at having really been aggressive on the home market, taking advantage of the assets that it did have in terms of a network and actually converting, the people that the areas that it has a network presence in, converting a lot of those people into, the customers that we now see translating into the over 1 million that we're talking about.
Does this move also speak to how essential fiber connectivity has become in South Africa? I mean, you write about how Vumatel reached this mark in eight years, while a company like ADSL took 14 years to peak.
Yeah, it really does. And I think one of the big things that we also need to think about is the use cases, for that type of internet. Back in the day, ADSL is what people would typically remember as dial-up. That's what we mean by ADSL. I think Telkom was probably one of the biggest player in that market at the time. And the use cases, it was more of a nice to have. At the time, having internet at your house, having internet at your business, maybe some, in the early days, if we think the 2000 to about 2010, that's the early years of Facebook. Those are the early years of, like your YouTube, some of the social media, online shopping, etc. All of those use cases were coming in, but in South Africa, it hadn't taken off, as much as, where we are now. Now, at least the use cases, I think, are a little bit more compelling to your point, where now a person can literally stream all their entertainment. You no longer need the bunny ears, to be watching terrestrial television. You can literally stream, all your entertainment, music, television, video calling, and internet-based calling on WhatsApp, FaceTime, Skype, Zoom have become so ubiquitous, right now.
Working from home.
Yeah, working from home has become, a really big thing. Connected devices, in the home, washing machines that can tell you that your cycle is done, fridges that can tell you that you don't have, enough peaches or whatever it is that you have. So where you're just living a more connected life, and at the same time, if we're going to be honest, the cost of that internet access has actually come down, right?
Yes.
And the speeds have, gone much faster. So it's a much better and more compelling, proposition now than internet or home internet was decades ago.
Just out of interest, is the consolidation we're seeing also leading to costs being lower?
If Vodacom and Massive are to be believed, right, then yes. But even outside of their, fiber merger, we have been seeing costs generally trending downwards when it comes to connectivity in the country. Of course, it's not where a lot of people want it to be, especially on the mobile data side. But when it comes to home connectivity on fiber, it certainly has come down. One of the most interesting pieces is that your internet speeds tend to dictate your price when it comes to fiber connectivity. And they usually have an upload speed and a download speed, which is why you have a 1010, which is 10 megabits per second upload, 10 megabits per second download. And they tend to dictate, you know, what price you're going to pay. Over the years, I remember with my connection at home, I started out with a 2020 line, you know, many years ago.
I think I still have a 2020 line.
Right. But over the years, for about the same price, we've been seeing your fiber operators doubling or increasing the speeds, right? Where I think by now my line is probably sitting at 200, right? But my prices have relatively stayed within the same bracket, right? Yes, there have been some inflationary increases, but there hasn't been any, you know, anything crazy that's happened. So that's 10 times the speed, but I haven't had 10 times
at a similar price.
10 times the increase in cost. So all of those things feed into, you know, that, you know, cheaper, you know, cost to communicate. Because at the end of the day, faster speed, what does it mean? I'm going to consume more. And if I'm consuming more, then it means the network is being utilized, and possibly your operators can actually be, you know, making more money from, you know, the various services that are operating on their platforms.
Right. Much of the recent growth, Mudiwa, is from townships and rural areas. Does this suggest that, you know, the big metros, the big markets are oversaturated, forcing operators to pivot into those markets? And what are some of the trade-offs there, especially when it comes to costs?
Saturated, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think we've reached the saturation point yet. The reason I'm saying that is because the way that fiber operators work is that they'll go into an area, I'll use a street. They will make sure that there's a fiber line on that street. Now, what happened in Johannesburg, Cape Town, I think parts of Durban, is that you had like 3 or 4 fiber operators going onto the same street and all digging their trenches. So now you have maybe Telkom, Vuma, Metro Fiber, all being, you know, on the same street. So there's saturation from that point of view. But in terms of customers, right, that hasn't necessarily translated to, let's say you have 100 houses on the street. It hasn't necessarily translated into 100 houses on the street coming and tapping into that fiber line, bringing it into their home, and then becoming customers, you know, of those. So saturation in terms of areas that have fiber. And that's where you then see your operators saying, okay, fine, let's go into areas where we haven't dug up yet, right, to lay down our lines, and let's see what type of, you know, opportunity we can actually get from people, you know, tapping into. And they've actually been seeing quite a bit of, you know, success. Back in the day, I remember Vox, right, which is another telecoms operator that also plays in this fiber space. They had a stated strategy: secondary cities and towns. So outside of your big metros, they were going and try and connect all of these secondary cities and towns around, you know, South Africa. So there's huge markets, you know, that are still available. And the reason I said not yet saturated is because I think the last numbers that we saw, you have roughly, I think it's 2 million or so fiber connections. I stand to be corrected there, but there's a huge, you know, gap of households that still need to be connected by fiber, you know, in South Africa. Some estimates have that sitting at around 14 to 17 million, you know, households in the country that could possibly be home internet customers. Because when it comes to home internet, fiber is just a method of connectivity.
Yes.
The other piece of competition is what's called fixed wireless. It's where you have a router at your house that has a SIM card as opposed to a fiber line. So there's direct competition with a Vodacom and MTN, you know, a Telkom for the home. So the home is a huge, you know, area of competition right now. So many people have cell phones in the country. I believe there's 2 SIM cards for every person in South Africa right now. But there's still a huge gap in homes that still need to be connected.
All right, let's leave it there, Mudiwa. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us this afternoon. That was Business Days, Mudiwa Gavaza. Brought to you by Ayoko, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.